you. Our group is comprised of a number of people, myself included. Suraj Dehal is a postdoctoral researcher based at La Jornada, together with Nick Webb and crew. He is not able to be here, unfortunately, but Angie Mestes, Larry Brown, Madeline Wilson, Seth Denizen, you can read their highlights, I suppose, and we will be hearing from each of them in just a few moments. So our talk about dust on snow, I was part of the group that started in 2018, conversing with other scientists and other people who work with agriculturalists. I am an agronomist, I'm a soil scientist. I work as an advisor day in and day out with farmers and with ranchers, advising them on the health of their soils. It's very collaborative work. It's a very kind of an intimate relationship, knowing the lives of these families and what they're up against. And it can be a very challenging field because the challenges of climate change, the challenges of market pressures, the challenges of not knowing what tomorrow will bring relative to drought or heat are very real, and they all relate back to the water cycle. They all relate back to the person's and the families or the community's interaction with that land and with that water. And it has that nexus of really the soil. That's where it all meets. I also serve as a non-paid elected official, so effectively a volunteer, on a soil and water conservation district together with Bill Brinton and our representative Larry Brown from CSU Extension, along with others through Moss Cooper Soil and Water Conservation District. And because we weren't quite sure how the day would flow, I deferred the bulk of my time to talk to you about the many great things we've been doing over a long period of time, to focus in more on the situation of the San Luis Valley, what we've been living, and to give time to this group that has formed through the summer to develop these ideas as to what will we do next. So these are some images I stole from the internet, and just to give you a sense of where we're located in the world in the San Luis Valley, if you haven't had the chance to spend time there yourself, it is the headwaters of the Rio Grande River. We are at the upper Rio Grande part of the watershed, and on the Colorado side of that state line. And effectively this odd-shaped parrot, the head of the parrot is where we are. And the Rio Grande comes out of the mountains near Creed and goes into the San Luis Valley and then makes a sharp turn south and courses through. And it's the lifeblood of our region in all senses. Since 2002, when we've had one of our most extreme drought events in memory, when none of our ditches flowed, or nearly none of our ditches flowed the whole year. We've been on a pretty steady decline for how much water our aquifer holds anymore. Aquifer in a global term, both the unconfined and the confined aquifers that are unconfined overlying the confined. And at the same time, the stream flows in our major rivers, the Rio Grande and Conejos rivers, in that watershed, have been diminishing. So because of the drought, because of the ongoing drought, and because of the lack of snow melt or just like this past year, our snowmelt predictions, wet water in the river were 70% of what we anticipated from snowpack. And so somehow the snow fell. When it was melted, it had water in it, but from the time that it was measured to the time that it made it to a measuring gate, measured in the mountains and then measured on the stem of the Rio Grande, we only received 70% of what was expected. And so there's 30% that disappeared. And we anticipate that dust had something to do with that, but it's a bit of a black box. We're not quite sure how much. Since that year of 2002, our region has been undergoing a painful transition where farmers and ranchers have, because of lack of water, or because now water is viewed as it really is, that the river and the aquifer are intimately connected, and that because we've been in a long situation of mining the aquifer beyond sustainability, we're now in a position where we need, both by state law and by physical necessity, to put water back in the ground. And to do that when our streams and rivers are running short, and to do that while trying to sustain an economy based on agriculture, has been a massive, massive challenge. And in large swaths of the San Luis Valley, the wells physically don't produce what they did 20 years ago. And so people have had to go from the early 2000s to present and ratchet down more and more and more how many acres they can sustain with intensely irrigated agriculture. Strangely enough, that has opened opportunity for diversity in our cropping systems and for diversity in the management that we do, allowing forage crops fed in fields as standing feed, allowing animal integration back in. So the soil health principles that people often talk about are 5. Let's see if I can remember them all up here in front of you. One is to keep the ground covered. We saw earlier in the day that critical difference between when you've got a bare soil surface and when you've got a covered soil surface with some sort of organic material or litter, how erosive those can be. Also, how incredibly different environments they are for receiving water, for holding water, for allowing plant life, for allowing microbial life, soil life, the life in the soil, to flourish, to thrive, to carry on. When we introduced or reintroduced more diversity into our simplified cropping systems, we saw that our soils became more lively, our soils became better protected, our soils became even more productive for our primary cash crops. And so the water use efficiency, where we were using water, became more interesting. However, it also made it so that the income from those lands, they still had to pay taxes on the land that they didn't farm actively and get a cash crop on, or that they didn't hay, but it's still part of the operation. So we've had this progression where we've got less and less pumping available, more and more need to recover the aquifer, less and less cropping available to sell and maintain the family income. And it's been tougher and tougher in the past 20 years. With that, because we have been, as a valley, as a region, less successful than we have been successful in recovering our aquifer, we have now tipped into the realm of the necessity of retiring lands entirely, of taking the irrigation away. So the San Luis Valley, on a good year, will average 8 inches precipitation. That's not enough. That is a desert. It's not enough to have actively growing plants for very long throughout the year. As such, when we retire those wells, we no longer pump them because we want to reduce the demand on our aquifer system. When we take, which is now the situation, when we take federal funding into our system, which is quite literally, in one way, a godsend, because it gives opportunity to a farmer or a rancher to take land that may not be incredibly productive, or they may be in a position in their lives where they don't have enough cash to continue on, or they've aged out of being able to keep up with the farm. And so it gives them an opportunity to take a cash settlement effectively to buy out the use of those wells so that they're not demanding on the system anymore, and there's a permanent retirement of those wells. However, we have, for context, we have 300,000 acres of irrigated lands in the San Luis Valley. That's what sustains our economy for the most part. We are probably at the least 40,000 acres overshot, meaning we need to see 40,000 acres go to sleep from potato production, from alfalfa production, from carrot production, from lettuce production. Those 40,000 acres, if they continue to be pumped, we will suck ourselves dry, and the state will have no other option but to come and turn us off and let all the water flow down. So that's the situation that we've been in. Currently, we have effectively 6 years to get our shit in order, and to fix and right this boat that we are currently sailing in, before the state has to do something as incredibly dire as turn all wells off in the most cash productive portion of our region. So that's the situation in a super small nutshell. This year, why this year? Why now? Why am I talking to you about dust on snow if the real big problem is not the San Luis Valley's dust, perhaps? It's because what we've experienced is through some really thoughtful and intentional funds seeking. We've had state legislatures, including Senator Cleve Simpson, who covers our area, be very successful at wrangling funds to help farmers and ranchers make this very difficult decision of how do we retire these lands, because we are over appropriated, we are over planted. And sure enough, there was $30 million that was infused into our economy to allow farmers and ranchers to make that tough decision and have effectively an exit strategy for those initially 10,000 acres, and it will eventually probably be 40,000 acres. But attached to that federal funding, there were no effective conditions to say, here's what shape the land needs to be in when you stop actively farming it. And when we learned this at the Soil and Water Conservation District level, we said, holy hell. We thought we knew dust before in the San Luis Valley. Alamosa County is our home county, home also the Great Sand Dunes National Park. So you can imagine the erodible landscape that we live in with that in our backyard. What's going to happen when suddenly 10,000 acres is now bare because there wasn't a requirement that it be anything but bare, effectively. On paper, yes, but effectively, no. And so myself, many others from our local community who care deeply about soil health, who care deeply about our community. I won't know how to get this back up, but somebody out there will. We started getting together on a monthly basis, on a bi-weekly basis, and talking about what can we do, who do we know who is game. They're going to take the money, but they're also game to cover their land, to do something more. And that was the start, really, of this massive effort, this massive emphasis on revegetation that you will hear more about, and a reinvigoration of the necessity of farmers and ranchers learning from each other and working with each other, and having people capable and willing to go and sit at those kitchen tables and have those what could be drawn out discussions about, could this work, how do we do it, and all of that. So None of us from the San Luis Valley group will get up in front of you and tell you, give you a data-rich presentation. But what we will give you is a story-rich presentation. And what we know through our work with farmers and ranchers, we know these things to be true, and that we know them to be true because we've seen them time and time and time again. Just as has been said before, no individual here will be able to fix this thing, won't be able to solve it. It is quite the puzzle. What we know at home is the dustier it gets, the harder it's going to get, no matter what. And that will include the implications of dust on snow. And the more dust on snow we have, the harder we'll get. If it's blown away, if you see dust in the air, that is not a healthy soil system. Good indicator that you don't have it, or it's fleeting if you do. And the more bare ground, we will turn our soils more to dust. When we saw it in some of the slides, adaptive management, that's the thing that is going to allow yours, mine, our interactions with land, farmers and ranchers' interactions with land, to turn, whether we have cover or not. Farmers tell us and ranchers tell us time and again, they like best, they learn best when they learn from other ranchers and farmers. And finding ways to make sure that those opportunities are ever more has been a preoccupation of ours in the Valley for a long while. And lastly, this is a reminder, first and foremost to me, to my colleagues, and everybody else, no matter where we go, if we're invited, we will be allowed to do work, we'll be allowed to have these conversations because there's some level of trust that's been built and will be earned, and it won't be assumed, so we can go wherever we want and do whatever we want. And a good friend of mine, Peter Donovan, has been very influential in helping our conservation district think beyond just our immediate day-to-day of, is there dust in the air? And also think about what does it mean to be together and to learn together. And he's a fantastic cartoonist, in my opinion, and has these examples that make me think a lot about what can happen when people get together in thoughtful ways and share their ideas. I'm going to turn it over to Madeline Wilson, who now will present what she has.